straddled on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. He was saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why? Ah!" And I just kept on stabbing his neck. I was so excited, so rushed up on adrenaline, and I just got
Brian Cohey was born into a troubled family in Grand Junction, Colorado on January 15, 2002. His father, Thomas Cohey, was an alcoholic and abusive man. His mother, Sarah Cohey, was struggling with her own mental health issues. Thomas Cohey was a violent man. He would often beat his wife and children. Brian Cohey remembers being beaten by his father from a very young age. He remembers the fear and the pain. He remembers the feeling of being helpless. Sarah Cohey was a kind and gentle woman. She loved her children very much, but she was unable to protect them from their father's abuse. She was also struggling with her own mental health issues. She suffered from depression and anxiety. Brian was diagnosed with autism at a young age. He had difficulty communicating and interacting with others. He was also very sensitive to noise and light. He was often bullied and ostracized by his peers. He was called a freak and a loser. He was beaten up and spat on. He had no friends. Despite his difficult upbringing, Cohey was a bright and curious child. He loved to read and learn about the world around him. He was also fascinated by art and music. In high school, Cohey began to write his own stories and poems. He also started to play guitar and sing. As he grew older, his mental health problems worsened. He developed severe depression and anxiety, and he began to have suicidal thoughts. He also developed a fascination with death and violence. He would often watch violent movies and TV shows. He also began to write about death and violence in his journal. When Cohey was in his early 20s, he moved to a big city to start a new life. He got a job as a waiter and began to attend college. However, his mental health problems continued to worsen. He began to have hallucinations and delusions. He also started to self-harm. Cohey's mental health has improved significantly since his breakdown. However, he still struggles with his illness. He continues to see a therapist and take medication. He also attends a support group for people with schizophrenia. Some experts believe that Cohey's mental health problems and his fascination with death and violence are linked. They believe that his mental health problems made him more susceptible to violent thoughts and behaviors. They also believe that his fascination with death and violence may have exacerbated his mental health problems. Cohey's depression may have made him feel helpless and worthless. This may have led him to think about suicide. His anxiety may have made him feel paranoid and threatened. This may have led him to be more aggressive and violent. Cohey's fascination with death and violence may have also exacerbated his mental health problems. By constantly exposing himself to violence, Cohey may have desensitized himself to it. This may have made it easier for him to think about and commit violence. In March 2021, Cohey's fascination with death turned deadly. He killed and decapitated a homeless man, Warren Barnes. On February 27, 2021, Brian Cohey drove to a homeless encampment in Grand Junction. He had decided to act on his fascination with death and violence. Cohey parked his car and walked through the encampment. He saw a homeless man, Warren Barnes, sleeping in his tent. Cohey approached the tent and pulled out a knife. Cohey stabbed Barnes to death. He then decapitated Barnes and dismembered his body. He put the body parts in plastic bags and took them home. Cohey kept Barnes' body parts in his closet for several days. He struggled with what to do with them. He thought about burying them, but he was afraid of getting caught. He thought about burning them, but he didn't want to attract attention.
It really pained me. Sorry, that was morbid. I tossed the armpits around. Like, I took the right armpit, threw it out, took the left armpit, threw it out, and then I took the head, put it in a leftover box. I always wanted to know what it felt like to cut up someone. It was just curious.
And how did you get here?
I murdered someone.
Okay. So start back at the beginning and go slow and tell me as many details as you can remember.
So, because I mean, Murray going to jail for the 15 years probably.
I have no idea.
Because
We're at the beginning.
it's murder. I mean, I'm going to jail for 20 probably, but I am in a bad state of mind at that time. I have major depressive disorder, so I am not thinking something positively.
Okay.
And Brian, before you start, you say you have a major depressive disorder. I'm just curious what those are.
Well, actually, I have several. I have high-functioning Asperger's.
Okay.
I have ADHD
Uh-huh.
and major depressive disorder.
Finally, Coey decided to leave Barnes' head in a nearby park. He put the head in a plastic bag and drove to the park. He walked into the park and left the bag on a bench. Coey drove home and went to bed. He was relieved to have finally gotten rid of Barnes' head, but he knew that he couldn't get away with murder forever. The next day, a passerby found Barnes' head in a park. The passerby called the police, and the police launched an investigation. The police interviewed people in the area, and they were able to identify Barnes as a victim. They also learned that Coey had been seen in the area around the time of the murder. The police went to Coey's apartment and arrested him.
So what's important to me is to learn as much about you and what you did and as I can.
Well,
As many details as you can give me, the better.
yeah, there's a road underneath, right?
Uh-huh.
Under the overpass. And I was driving along, and I see a shape here on the railway track. So I'm like, oh, interesting.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife, I put on 3 layers of gloves.
What are you worried about? I mean, this looks like it's pretty close to the road and stuff. Somebody seeing you
Well,
or catching you?
It was 11 p.m.,
Okay.
so not many were driving by.
So were you worried about them seeing you?
I was worried about one of them stopping. But
What did you think could happen if somebody...
Well, if they looked, well, it was quite dark under there, so they wouldn't have seen the guy, like they looked. They would have seen me holding a bloody 12-inch knife, wearing gloves, and wearing a mask to conceal my identity, face mask.
Okay. So you weren't doing it for COVID, you were doing it to hide your face?
Partially. Social distancing. Is it okay if I do a demonstration?
Oh, yeah.
This is him. I was straddled on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time I was growling and making the animalistic noises,
Why were you doing that?
I suppose it was a frenzy.
Okay.
I was so excited, so rushed up on adrenaline and everything. Like,
Okay.
woo! And I paused and he said, why are you doing this? And I said, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. All the while, I cut open his belly to see his guts. I put those in plastic Ziploc bags. And then I left his body there. And then I took the head, put it in a leftover box from the dinner a few nights ago.
They found the rest of Barnes' body parts in Coey's closet and was arrested on March 1st, 2021. Coey was charged with first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Coey's trial began in January 2023. The prosecution presented evidence of Coey's mental health problems, including his autism, depression, and anxiety. The defense presented evidence that Coey was insane at the time of the murder. In March 2023, a jury found Coey guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. The case of Brian Coey is a complex and disturbing one. It raises important questions about mental health, violence, and the criminal justice system. Coey's mental health problems played a significant role in his crime. However, it's important to note that mental illness does not excuse violence. Coey made a conscious choice to kill Warren Barnes. The criminal justice system must balance the need to punish criminals with the need to protect society from dangerous individuals. In the case of Coey, the jury decided that he posed a threat to society and that he should be sentenced to life in prison.